and welcome to Grace Unscripted, where we share stories of the people in and around Grace Church without any script, just real, raw conversations about life change through Jesus. I'm your host, Audrey Wallace, and today's guest is Deb Curtis. Deb Curtis is somebody that I have seen around the halls of Grace Church, her husband, her children, all of her family around the halls of Grace Church, and it's just legendary in my book. So I was so excited to sit down and hear where she comes from and what her story is. And the word that I would use to summarize her is the word together, the way that her family prioritized being together when she was a child, the way that she prioritized being together with her family, and the way that she teaches others to do that as well. I remember a class I went to where she taught that to me and how that's impacted me. You'll hear about that here in this episode. So I just love her faithful heart, her trust in the Lord, and the consistent faith that she's carried throughout all of the ups and downs in her life. And I think you're going to enjoy her story here today. Hey, Deb.
Hey, how are you, Audrey?
I'm amazing. How are you?
Good, doing well.
I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of fun here tonight.
We are.
So you and I have known each other for like a long time, but never deeply. So
Right.
I'm very excited to get to know your story and hear what your life has been like.
Yeah.
So I feel like you seem like an Akron gal. Is that true? Did you grow
Yes,
up in this area?
I did.
Are you through and through? All right,
Yep.
tell me where you grew up and what that was like.
100% grew up in West Akron, born in Washington, D.C., but moved here.
Oh, okay.
My parents were Air Force. My dad was Air Force
Oh,
guy.
fascinating.
So when we moved here, we rented a house for a little while, and then we bought a house in West Akron, and my mom still lives in that house. And we're preparing right now we just sold our home as well, and we're going to move in together. So
To your childhood home?
not to our childhood home, but
Okay.
she's going to sell hers as well, and then we're going to move in together to a new home. So
Oh, that's a big transition.
it is. It's
Okay.
huge. Doing
Well,
a lot of packing.
That's jumped forward a
Right,
lot. But
right.
okay, so
Yeah.
Air Force, DC, moved to West Akron, but stayed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So my dad, since he was part of the Air Force, we moved to Akron to be near family. And he actually took a job at the University of Akron because he was teaching Air Force, intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's probably more than what you
Whoa.
needed to know. But
That sounds
he was
amazing.
teaching about a lot of this kind of stuff for the Air Force. And then he became diabetic. And when that point in history, they decided to just separate everyone with a medical condition. So
Wow.
separated him from the Air Force, and it was just my sister and I. We were living here. I had a sister born in California. I was born in D.C., and then we have one more sister born here in Akron.
Oh, wow.
So we're from all over the world.
Okay.
All over the country, technically.
Yeah. Literally opposite sides.
Opposite sides,
Mhm,
yep.
And one right in the middle.
But great. And when we moved here, my parents had been part of a Grace Brethren church in Washington, D.C.,
Okay.
which was in Temple Hills, Maryland. And they loved it. Like, they had both grown up different denominations, but they loved Grace Brethren. So they came here to Fairlawn Grace Brethren. And the first Sunday they came, there was about 7 people here.
What?
So there was an old lady who had been a widow, and Aunt Sarah, that's what we called her. And then there was one other family. Kids were all grown, and then it was the pastor and his wife, and then the 4 of us when we walked in.
Wow.
And my parents were like, nope.
Whoa.
So they had determined they weren't going to stay. That was like, no, we'll look for another church, maybe somewhere else. And there were a few in the area at that point. But my dad tells the story. He went home and he started praying, and the Lord just made it like abundantly clear that he was calling him here. He was like, I want you at Fairlawn Grace Brethren Church. That's where I want you to be. I want you to take your family there. Be faithful, and I will provide. But, he was like, no, Lord, like, my girls won't have friends. My wife needs friends. I need friends. We have this great community back in
That's what your
Temple
expectation
Hills.
level was. Yeah.
Exactly. But that was not to be. So after that, my dad said, you know what, we're going to stay, and we're going to figure that out. And that's kind of how we started at Fairlawn Grace Brethren Church.
What year-ish would you say
That would
that
probably
was?
be 1973. I think, 1973.
7 people?
7 people.
So you guys increased the percent, 50% increase
Yeah,
that
it was-
weekend that you showed up.
It was noticeable that we were there. Extremely noticeable. And you know what? I kind of get accused of, being able to hear me long before you ever see me anyway, because I'm a little bit, rambunctious, even as a kid.
Always have been. Okay.
So it was like, wow, okay, all right, we are going to have to figure this out. And we just followed my dad's lead, and he did provide. And it was like slowly but surely the church grew. Pastors came, pastors left, but people stayed. There were, children that came that were, I think all the first family that came had all three of their girls were the same age as us. So
All right.
my dad felt like, okay, you know what, Lord,
There's some evidence.
you promised
Yeah.
and we're staying faithful and you've
Okay.
provided. So that was great just to have friends, and
Okay.
have a community. And so my experience was, just seeing my parents really trust the Lord and that he would then provide. That was like ingrained into me from a really young age. And my dad was actually in Christian education, but he knew that in between pastors, he would probably have to take the pulpit or do something,
Really?
to help. So he got ordained in the Grace Brethren
Oh, wow.
denomination, so he could preach and he could marry and bury and, all those sorts of things. But at the same time was also a Christian school principal of a small Christian school in Talmadge. So he kind of did double duty off and on, and the church would grow, and then, a pastor would leave, and it would sort of level off, and then the church would grow again. And it was just a cycle, and he would step in and stand in the gap every time they needed an interim pastor until a new pastor would arrive. So we watched a lot of that happen,
Wow.
like over the years. But my high school years, we had one pastor that came and was here for a long period of time, and the church really grew. And we had a youth group of about 150, and we felt
Wow.
like, wow, you know what? This is great. Started going to it was called Brother National Youth Conference before it was called Momentum.
Momentum. Yes.
So we would go to those. We did Bible quizzing. I mean, we were here just, how Jeff talked about this past weekend, from the womb, basically in church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday. And if there happened to be a special speaker on a weekend for a revival, we were back
You
here.
were here. Probably also setting the chairs up and tearing
Yes,
them back down.
setting up the
before
chair.
and
Well,
after.
there were pews at that point, but yeah, it was always
Oh,
setting up
yeah.
something, tearing something
Sure,
down.
sure.
I think at that point, everybody took a turn helping clean the
Sure.
church, and
Wow.
doing so. Every family kind of pitched in and
Yeah.
helped clean the church and do different things, So I think at a young age, we just got the idea: you serve.
Yeah.
That's just what you do.
And was this, I always love to ask this question at this point, was that something you came joyfully, or was it something you got drugged to, or what do you
Ooh.
remember about that?
I think as a child, nobody wants to have to do
Yeah,
that as a
yeah.
child. They want to play with their friends.
Sure.
But somehow my parents made it fun. Like somehow they would bring us in, they would make us like really understand we were a part of this. This wasn't just, mom and dad are doing this. This is a family event. You're a part of this. We all do this together because this is how we serve the Lord.
This is reminding me of something that you taught me years ago. I'll save it till later, but
Ooh, good.
we all do this together. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can feel that from you. Stands out to me.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so that's your childhood. And did you you prayed at Bible camp when you were 6 and baptized at 7 and lived a pure life the rest of your days, or did you have some ups and downs and ins and outs with the Lord?
Oh, absolutely. I think that I used to think in my 20s, man, I didn't have this like radical, saving out of something
Yeah.
kind of testimony. I just had this consistent faith. My mom was my Sunday school teacher. She and I prayed together to ask Jesus into my heart when I was 5.
Yep.
We came out and told the pastor. The pastor said, "Oh, this is wonderful. I think we should talk about, baptism." And so I got baptized then the next year. And I mean, it was one of those consistent, solid things. I say, don't ever underestimate the gospel being presented at an early age, because man, those are the things that really stick with you. I can clearly remember the day my mom and I prayed together. Clearly remember.
At 5.
Down in the basement.
Wow.
Now what would be
Here in this building?
In this building,
Oh,
yeah.
get out.
I think the last part of this building that's actually left is the the cafe, area that's kind of like Power Kids check-in or off down the stairs. But those beams right there went down into the basement. We had a Sunday school room that was over there on that left-hand side, and there was like a big fellowship hall. And she presented the gospel clearly to all 8 of us, and I was like, I want Jesus in my heart.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a heritage. It's an amazing heritage, and so I think each step of the way after you make that first decision, God just takes you to another level, and then another level, and then another level, and He's asking you for more each time,
and giving you more.
and giving you more.
Absolutely. If you
And-
keep seeking Him, there's a limitless cavern
Yes,
that you can journey through.
yes, and it was hard. There were some days it was hard, and I was like, I don't like this. I don't like having my parents be in ministry where you would see them, struggle, and they'd be hurt or they'd be disappointed. And I think in my mind, it kind of stuck with me growing up. I love what they're doing, and we've done this as a family, but when I get old enough, ministry is not going to be my pathway. I'm going to choose something else completely different, because then there won't be all this struggle. I won't have the same struggle, and I'm certainly not marrying a pastor.
Okay.
That was, like the thought in the back of my mind.
Because you witnessed that.
I
and it
watched
sounds
it.
like, they drew you into it. They didn't hide things. They don't hold back.
No.
They let you be in the real
Very
rawness
transparent.
of it.
Yeah, very transparent with us about things, which I think was really beneficial. Hard to process sometimes, but they'd even go through that with us and help us understand it a little bit. So I remember it got to be about middle school. I have a younger sister. She was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic. And then I have an older sister who she was actually very active with like academics. That was like her thing. And I remember being in middle school and thinking to myself, I have nothing I'm really good at. There's nothing that makes me stand out. I'm the middle child, Enough struggle as it is, just being the middle child.
Yeah, you could write a book.
But I do remember praying, and I was on my way home. We were on a holiday with family down in Virginia, and we were driving home. And my parents, I think, were both just very busy and kind of overwhelmed with like some of the things they needed to do with both my sisters. Because, there's only 2 of them. We outnumbered them. And so I remember praying, and I remember saying, God, don't ever let me forget what it feels like right now to be 13, have a broken heart, and nobody to really like process that with.
Oh, wow.
Don't let me forget this, because I want someday to be able to be that kind of person, or be able to talk with somebody that is struggling at like 13, 14, 15. That was just a weird prayer to pray right at that moment as a 13 or 14-year-old, but I remember it distinctly.
Yeah.
And I think as I kept like moving through those phases of my walk with Jesus, I remember getting to high school, making a decision, okay, I got to go to college. I want to do college after this. I'm going to do broadcasting. I'm going to be in television. And I want to like be a reporter, and I want to like report the news. And, that was like, okay, I have figured out my thing. This is what I'm going to do. So I did. I pursued that. I kind of went down that route, knowing in the back of my mind that I had prayed that prayer at 13. But I was like, you know what? The Lord's opening doors. I'm moving in this direction. I'm at a Christian college. I was at Grace in Indiana for a couple of years,
Okay.
and then transferred to Cedarville. And that's where I met my husband, which was exciting. But I went there because they had broadcasting,
Okay.
and they have a full television broadcast journalism degree. So that's what I wanted to graduate with. So I graduated, and I got a job at an in-house production facility in the Cleveland Clinic. So my job at that point, trying to break into TV, my job at that point was to like videotape surgeries in the OR, edit those surgeries down, do voiceovers, do some on-camera, voiceovers and things with it. And then we would give this final production to the doctor, the physician who needed that particular video, and he would take that to like a medical conference and show people his amazing, angioplasty or something that he, engineered or
Oh my
designed.
gosh. And this is before iMovie and iPhone
Yes.
and all the easy editing tools that we have
This was
now.
old school. I mean, this
Yeah.
was before like even CGI and anything else. I mean,
For
this was like
sure.
even like reel to reel. Have you ever heard of those reel to reel?
Yeah.
Yeah, recordings. Like you would cut the tape,
Literally
splice
splicing it with
Yep.
your hands, not with a little scissor app on
Exactly.
your phone.
No, there was
Oh
no
my gosh.
digital editing, none of that yet.
my
So,
gosh.
so it was fun. It was like a little bit of cutting edge. That was like 80s and 90s, like late
Mm-hmm.
80s, early 90s. And then I did get this job in television, and I was very excited. I was like, "This is it. This is where it's all going to start. I'm going to be on the anchor desk in 5 years." That was like life goals.
Yeah.
After 2 years, I said, I had no idea this is what it was going to be like.
Wow.
You'd show up for the morning meeting, you'd get your assignment, you'd go out. That was probably 8 a.m. You'd go out, you'd do your assignment, you'd come back, you'd wait for the 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock news to air.
Yeah.
And if they needed you to do a stand-up in the middle, you would have to be there for that. You go home and you start the whole thing
It's
over
just
again.
your whole life.
It
all
was. It was,
consuming.
15, 16-hour days that I
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah, not all it's
I think I really want to wait. Yeah. And we got married, Bob and I, my husband, Bob Curtis, we met at Cedarville. He was my math tutor. That's how I met
Oh,
him.
la la.
He was very good at math, so it was very beneficial to me because I needed a tutor badly. And we had a mutual friend who kind of I think intentionally pushed us in that direction, which was nice. It was great. And so I came home and talked to him, and I said, Bob, I don't think I like this broadcasting thing anymore. You're like, what do you think about that? He said, if you don't like it, quit.
All right.
Simple as that.
Easy instructions.
You don't like it, quit. And I said, but it's my degree. And he was like, well, working at the Cleveland Clinic is also using your degree. Why don't you go back there and finish up there? So we did. I said, okay, if you and I are on the same page about it, then absolutely. So I left broadcasting and went back to the Cleveland Clinic and finished up there. We had always decided we wanted to have a family at some point. But God had very different ideas. All my friends that, in each other's weddings got married. Everybody starts getting pregnant, and we're not getting pregnant. And we're just praying and we're asking the Lord. And we were married 6 years before we actually had our first baby. So I was almost 30. I was 29, and I turned 30 a couple months later. And so then the decision was, do I want to stay home? Do I want to keep working?
Yes.
Kind of going back and forth.
Crossroads.
We just made the decision. I said, I don't think there's anything that's right or wrong there. I think it's just, what do we want to do for our family? And my husband said, if you want to stay home, we'll just figure it out. If you want to stay home, we'll figure it out. And I think probably because I had waited that long, I really, really wanted to stay home.
Soak it all
I did.
in,
I really
yes.
did. I was
Yeah.
like, and what if this is our only one? Because,
Sure.
we had so much trouble.
Yeah.
And God was really gracious and faithful to give Bob really good jobs where he would be able to be close. We made it a priority that we said dinner together every night. It's just, it's got to be. I don't want us, there might be times when we, have to make an exception, but as a general rule, I want dinner with the kids every night and Dad, all of us around the table.
Yeah.
So we figured out how we could do that, and make that happen. So we had Allie in 1998, and we had Maddie in 1999, and then we had Zoe in 2001 and Bobby in 2003.
So the Lord kept giving.
He did. We figured it out. Whatever we couldn't figure out before, we figured it out, and it was great. I loved being a mom. I loved being home with the kids. There was, there's days that were exhausting, and I was trying to remind myself, this is my get-to life. Remember Brian?
Sure do.
That was a great sermon. I still
Yes.
remember that one, my get-to life. And I was like, soak it all
But
in.
I have to, but then
Yeah.
I get to.
Yeah, but then I get to. And it was great. It was great just being home with the kids when they were young and spending time with them and getting to be a family. And we would do we would just do a lot of fun activities together. And I think that might have been my, like, things have been going along well. I haven't had too many issues. You know, we've got this great family, cousins growing up together, uncles and aunts, grandmas and grandpas. I mean, my grandfather lived to be 101.
Wow.
So he came to church here when he moved up
Oh,
from
my.
Florida. He was here at Grace, and he put little earplugs in.
Is he one of those lores? Like I hear the legend of these folks that
Yes.
did that sacrifice knowing that we were aiming at this younger generation and
Yeah.
they were willing to
Yes.
put in the earplugs and
Yes.
come anyways.
100%. And he would say, listen, a little discomfort for the first 10,
Yeah.
15 minutes is nothing if it's reaching a whole generation
Amen.
for Jesus.
Amen.
And so I'm like a 101-year-old man sitting there with
You
his
just
earplugs
can't
in.
argue with that.
But
Absolutely.
loved Grace, loved everything about Grace and all the investment that he made here. He felt like it was made back into him as well. You know, he came to know the Lord a little later in life, so it was great that he had like that regular, consistent pastoral influence. Jeff still talks about Dale Crane, that was his name. Just that he was his friend. He was like,
Yeah.
I can't ever say I'd been friends with a 101-year-old, but I was. I'm like, yeah. He was such an easygoing guy. He's my mom's father. So just wonderful person. My dad, so one of the unique things about the Christner side of the family, we have this predisposition for diabetes. Like my dad had it, my husband's father had it, my sister has it, and then our son, our youngest, our only son, has type 1 diabetes as well. And it's one of those things that you don't anticipate that that's the path your life is going to take. But I think my husband and I both said, more than likely, one of our kids
Yeah.
with all of this predisposition
Yeah.
to diabetes, one of our kids is going to have
25%.
it.
Yeah. One
like
in four. Yeah.
the odds are definitely not in our favor. But we're like, you know what? God's faithful. He'll work through whatever situation comes up. And that's where like the story for me kind of like transitioned. Like I'd had this beautiful, like growing up, this family, wonderful support, Christian education, great church, wonderful people. And it was in 2004, so it was a year after Bobby was born. I was in church, and we were worshiping. We were singing music, and we were worshiping. And I told my husband, I said, it was like I literally turned around and looked behind me because I thought someone tapped me on the shoulder. And I was like, what was that? You know, and it was genuinely just this radical encounter with Jesus in church during my worship time where he just kept saying to me over and over again, do you trust me? And I was like, well, of course I trust you, Lord. If I didn't trust you, where would I be? And he was like, no, you say that, but you have to trust me because I'm going to take you through some really difficult things, and I have to know you're bought in now.
Wow.
Really, like, and my husband's looking at me, and the tears are streaming down my face while we're worshiping, and he was like, are you okay?
What's
He's mouthing,
happening?
are you okay?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'll tell you afterward. And I was so distracted.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, Lord, of course I trust you. And he
Yeah.
was like, you know what? I need you to say it. I need you to say it out loud. I need you to say to me, I trust you.
Wow.
So I did. And it was like something broke, something just changed from that day moving forward. Because in my mind, of course my family is yours. Of course my parents are yours. Of course my upbringing and my church and all the things that I've put all of my faith and my hope and my trust in. Of course I trust you because I've had this wonderful experience.
Right. All these beautiful things. Yes.
Of course I trust
Yeah.
you. And he was basically saying, no, you're going to encounter some pretty heavy things, and you need to, this needs to be your buy-in moment here, that your children are mine, your husband is mine, your sisters, your parents, your church, your friends, everything is mine. And it is literally just a gift that I give every day. And I was like, okay, Lord, okay, this is that moment. This is my benchmark, moment where I just put my stake in the ground and I said, okay, this is it, moving forward. And each time after that, like each time I'd be like, is this it? Is this
Waiting
the
for
thing?
the
Yeah.
test or something.
And he's like, no, it's all it, all of it. It's your walk with me. It's everything that I'm preparing you for is because I need to know that you completely trust me and that no matter what, you're not going to back out on this. You're in 100%. Like, okay.
All right.
And it was amazing to me that I think that was a key moment where I could look back now and I could say, each thing he brought along after that, I was completely prepared for it. Was I heartbroken? Were there hard things? Was I
Yes.
devastated? Absolutely. But
Yeah.
did I get out of bed the next day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And did you still find joy? And did you
still
still
found joy.
find provision? Did you still find faithfulness?
Yes.
And those things that you experienced in your youth and in your legacy,
Yes.
and
Yes.
things really sucked and things were really hard, or whatever it may be, you haven't shared yet.
Yeah.
But what did he take you through?
Oh, so many incredibly but difficult things. But it was like that for me was the transition of, I had said, oh, I'm not going to do ministry because I've seen my parents go through all this. Well, guess what? They didn't have to be in ministry for that to happen. That was not, the end all to what was happening in their life. That just happened to be where they served and where they felt like God had called them. And it doesn't matter where you are, if it's ministry or if it's, teaching or if it's
Sure.
being a doctor or a
In
nurse
business,
or what.
yeah, anything.
Yeah, you're going to have moments where you're just going to need to have that complete trust that God has you completely and totally in his loving care. And that he's not going to leave you. He's never going to forsake you. I think in high school, they make you do those predictors, and everybody had to pick a Bible verse. And I was like, oh, crud, I totally forgot to pick my verse. And you had to put it down that day. So I was like, I'll just go with Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Well, little did I know what a profound choice that would have been, because it's trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. I was like, wow, that's a little foreshadowing, of everything he was asking me to do, even in that moment. And looking back now, I was like, maybe that was predestined, that I was
Yeah.
supposed to actually pick that verse and understand it more fully as life moved forward and as my faith matured and grew. Now I'm realizing at this point, there's so much I still don't know. Like, you think, oh, I'll get to this point and I'll know so much and I'll feel so settled and so comfortable. No. If you get to that point, your faith has gone stagnant.
Yes. Yeah, because there's always more.
There's
more that he
always
gives, more that he asks, more that
More
you
that
can
he
learn.
teaches, right? Like, so much more. And it's like you don't even grasp that until you've had a little bit of little time and a little space to distance yourself and look back and say, wow, how faithful was he? How faithful was he all the way through? Like, from jobs and careers. Our oldest daughter, she was diagnosed with a heart condition at 13 that we never knew about. Had a pacemaker when she was
my.
26. They put in a pacemaker when she was 26. She'll have that the rest of her life, but it was just a fluke. Like, she was the healthiest child you have ever seen in your life. And she just had this strep test, and the doctor said, oh, I hear something that sounds odd.
Oh, interesting.
Went to a
I
specialist,
discovered it.
discovered it.
Like,
So
praise God for that.
A-
For the
amen.
strep situation
Yes.
that revealed something else, but also
Right.
that is so hard.
and that was early 2000s. She was 13, so that would early mid 2000s. And after that, it was just that was the domino hit that God's like, okay, remember that thing we just
Yeah,
kind of talked
buckle up.
about? We worked. He's like, all right, this is where the pathway starts, where you're just going to experience hard things, but I'm going to be there and I'm going to take you through it and you're going to be all right. And you need to trust me. That's why we needed to establish that back here. So are we good? And I'm like, yeah, all right,
Yeah.
Lord, this is it. I'm like, oh, this must be it. Well, then it was just, we're off to the races. Then it was, our son was diagnosed as the type 1 diabetic. We lost my dad in 2016. He was like the epitome of the patriarchal father who just loved everybody. So, like, everything I think I really visually watched happen as a Christ follower, I think I got from watching both my parents. Like, in the Word, trusting God, praying, doing all of those things on their own, but then leading our family in
Yeah.
that direction as well. So everybody in our family on our side would just say Pop was the it guy. You know,
Yeah.
he was the guy. He would
The spiritual pillar.
the
Yes.
pillar.
Yes.
He was the guy here at church. Somebody'd walk past and he'd say, "How are you doing?" "Oh, not so great." "What's going on?" They'd, tell him, and he's like, "Let's pray right now." And he would stop and pray with people in the hall right on the spot. That was like his thing. He was a walking concordance. You would say, "Where's that verse?" And he'd go, "Oh, I think that's like 1 Corinthians or something." I'd be like,
You're
"It really
right.
is 1 Corinthians." You're impressive,
gift.
Dad.
Yeah, what a
It was,
gift.
because he had just
Spent
really
so much time there.
He'd spent so much time there. And so I think we all wanted to like emulate that. We wanted to like imitate that. And then it was like we lost him. We lost my husband's mother a week later. We lost my father-in-law about 5 years later because he was living with us at that point. We were caring for him because he was diabetic as well. So we lost him at the end of 21. And then this past December, we lost my sister, my oldest sister, to brain cancer. And that might have been one of the ones that I was like,
Oof.
Lord,
Yeah. I got some words. Yeah.
I'm going to need a timeout on this one just for a minute, But even in the midst of her struggling and even in the midst of her just fighting the good fight, that she really had a type of cancer that lasts somewhere maybe between 6 months to a year. And she was a good 2.5, almost 3 years
Wow.
before she passed. And
Wow.
so
Little gifts
it
within
was.
it, but
It was a
still
gift.
so hard.
it was a huge gift. And then my younger sister, she actually was type 1 diabetic from the time she was 13. This is one of those amazing God moments. All of us, we knew she was on the kidney transplant list. We all knew she needed a kidney. Everybody went and got tested. So I would say there might have come a point when the Cleveland Clinic contacted us and said, okay, we don't need any more right now. We just need to process the ones we already have.
Wow.
So, and I was like, okay, no problem. There were probably somewhere between 50 to 60 candidates for a kidney transplant. There's 5 markers that you want to hit to be a good candidate. They can go all the way up to 8 or 9 markers that they try to match up, but at least 5
Yeah.
are like crucial. It's rare that a direct family member will meet all those markers,
Wow.
but you would think, right?
Sure, within
blood
a
type
blood-
and everything
yeah,
else, yeah. But nobody was making a match, and our second daughter, Maddie, was on a road trip as soon as she graduated from college, but she got tested before she left. She came back, and they contacted her about 3 to 4 months later and said, you have like 7 of the
Wow.
markers that they need. We won't tell you what to do, but we're letting you know. And she was 22 at that point.
Wow.
So she had, like,
It's a big life decision.
yeah, big life decision to make. And first thing she did was, will you guys pray with me? Will you go to appointments with me? I want to make the right choice. I want to do the right thing. So she went through the whole process. She was almost a perfect match. And she donated her kidney then in 2022. And it was like my sister and my daughter.
Oh my gosh, what a
where you're emotionally
experience, yeah.
torn both ways. My mom, it's her granddaughter and her daughter, and her sisters and her aunt. It was just that whole relationship. But it was such a beautiful thing when she finally said, "You know what? I think I don't want to over spiritualize this, but she needs a kidney and I have an extra." I
Yeah.
think that's
Like God's
pretty
design.
basic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? But it's a big decision. It is a big decision. And so she decided to do that, and our whole family was up. So our family that lives in New Orleans, they were up for that week in the summer. And I said, "Are you gonna tell everybody now?" And she was like, "Yeah, I think I should." She's like, "But maybe you guys could help that," because she goes, I don't know that I'm going to be really good with it. My husband's like, "I gotcha." So we all go out to dinner, and we're sitting there. So it's like, I think 18 to, no, there was like 21 of us because we had extra cousins of cousins that were there too. So there's
wow.
21 of us at this restaurant. We're eating dinner. Bob bows his head and says, "Hey, let's pray. I'm going to pray for us." So he prays, and he says, "God, in your ultimate plan and your wisdom, you find ways, you find a way to actually help us and give us what we need at the moment we need it. And we're just so incredibly grateful right now that Maddie is a perfect match for Becky." And everybody just
room.
stopped and kind of looked up. And then it was a celebration. It was like this horrible,
Yes.
thing that you feel torn, wound up just being this huge celebration that we all just got to be together and celebrate and be excited about. And I was like, I went home that night, got into bed, and I looked at my husband and I was like, "See, that's a win. That's a win. That's a huge win where God is just saying, yeah, remember, we kind of made this covenant. We made this promise back before, and I'm going to fulfill it all. I'm going to walk you through the valley of the shadow of death. I'm going to walk you through sickness. I'm going to walk you through pain. I'm going to walk you through heartache. And you're going to be on the other side of it, praising and rejoicing
Yeah.
because I'm faithful
He comforts you.
and I am who
Yeah.
I say I am."
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot that you've journeyed through
It's
with
been
it.
a lot.
Yeah, when I think of you, I do think of an abundant family. Like if I were to think of even just the Curtises, and I'll tell you the thing I alluded to earlier. When my children were very little, I went to a parenting class that you and Bob did
Okay.
down at the old community room here
Yes,
at Grace.
yes.
And the thing that you said was that the Curtises, we go together, and that's kind of what you were sharing earlier. That we all do this together is what you said earlier, and that was the thing. You said if one of us has a track meet, we are at the track meet cheering. If one of us has this, we are there with them. I know the siblings are saying, but I've got XYZ I could
Right.
do. No. Curtises ride together and we cheer for one another.
Yep.
And that is something that stuck with me. And there have been moments when my family could separate. And I'm like, hey, we need to go and cheer for each other.
That's right.
But when I think of you, I think of this abundant family. Even though, sure, you have 6 in your own home, but just even flowing outside of that with siblings and aunts and uncles and all that, just from a distance, I could feel that from you. And so all of this is making more sense to me now to see, you had 21 people in a room for your family. I don't think I could get 21 people together for my family if I tried. There's just not that many of us.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But it's great because you know what? Moving into the place, which that great segue. Never thought I wanted to be in ministry. Bobby went back to school, and Christy and I started talking. She goes, "I could really use some help."
Tell us who Christy is.
Christy Care. Christy Varga.
Oh,
Sorry,
Christy
I do
Varga
that all
now,
the
but for our
time.
listeners, so she
Yes.
is.
Christy Varga, Christy Kier. She was actually Power Kids director, and she was saying, "I could really use some help." And I was like, I could come and help you. That would be great. Just a few hours a week while the kids are in school. And that was 16 years ago. So
That one, yes. Sure, I could come and help.
Yeah, and that transitioned very quickly with Power Kids, such rapid growth at that point, moving out of Power Kids, moving into student ministries. Pastor Brad and I have worked together now for 16 years. I primarily wrapping up my 10th year of doing 360 internship, which is high school interns that we mentor and disciple and we work with, and we have them actually take part in sports camps or serving in, Power Kids, maybe serving on the parking team, maybe serving in First Impressions, but they also serve their peers on Wednesday night, and we kind of give them credit for doing that. And then what we do is we actually fund their trip to Momentum, pay for their transportation and pay for their trip to Momentum. And I'm so grateful because that really is the thing that sparked in me just this
Yeah.
love for discipleship. And my primary job, no matter what I'm doing, will always be discipleship. And I'm having a conversation, with a few people even recently, and I'm like, we overcomplicate it. Literally last year, a girl at Momentum made it so simple for me. She's a senior in high school this year. She said, I get intimidated when I sit down and read the Bible by myself, and I get nervous that maybe I don't understand what I think I know. Would you sit down and read the Bible with me? I'm like, absolutely. Let's meet every Monday at 8:30 at a coffee shop. It has been the most beautiful thing where she reads, I read, we get together, we talk about it. She's like, oh, I wrote down a question. Oh, I underlined this. Oh, I highlighted that. And we just talk about it. And she's like, I'm understanding the Bible for the first time because I have a person helping me with that.
Yeah, sounds like discipleship to me.
I'm like, you know what? That is really what it comes down to. And I think all of us, we overcomplicate
Yeah,
it.
let
by
me get a
saying,
book and a
Yeah.
steps guide
fill in
and
these blanks
sure.
and we just it's the Bible.
And there's goodness in that too. Like there's goodness in having tools, but there's also
Absolutely.
goodness in just you, me, and the Word.
Yes.
Yeah.
And come see that it is sweet, right? The words of the Bible and the things that we read, they're sweet, but they're also sharper than any two-edged sword. And they cut the marrow from the bone. I mean, it is like the Bible speaks the truth, and it's clear and it's concise, and we just have to dig into it. And I think, how there's this, if every person in a church decided to adopt a child out of social services, that there wouldn't be any kids left. I think it's the same concept that if every person in a church who's been here at least 3 to 5 years, you don't need to walk up to someone and say, hey, can I disciple you? You can say, you know what? I want to start reading the Bible on a little more regular basis and be very intentional. Would you be willing to do that with me? I mean, 1 or 2 people,
Yeah.
you sit down and read the Bible together, you've got a discipleship group that's profound. And then she's this girl, that I'm prepared to meet with every Monday. She's now going off to college, and she's like, I'm going to do this same thing with my roommate. I've just met my roommate, and we're going to get together, and there's going to be other people. And I was like, yeah.
It's multiplication
absolutely,
too.
that's it.
That's the way it spreads. Absolutely. And you've trained her up in a way to then give and pour out. And,
Right.
And I'm sure you've gained a lot from it as well
So
that you
much.
didn't even anticipate.
So much that's the thing, is you don't anticipate how much you're going to receive
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
You
Given
just think, oh, well, I'm doing this because
Sure.
it's the right thing to do.
Sure.
No, you're doing it because God's placed that need within you to do it. Multiplication and helping people understand what the Bible says, but then you actually getting so much more out of that, where you're like, ooh, there's such good accountability here. There's so many good things that I'm reading in a different way. A perspective that, an 18-year-old has is going to be a way different perspective than a 56-year-old has. So it's good. It's so that intergenerational relationship. I think in that parenting class, I think at one point we might have said this too. Robbie came by my desk the other day, Robbie Neidlinger, pastor here. He said, you know what? I remember that parenting class, and what I remembered from that class is what we're actually seeing right now. Is you said, invest when they're little. Really invest the time of training and teaching and discipleship when they're little. And then when they're teenagers, you can just have so much fun with them. Don't be scared of it or intimidated by it, because it's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to be graduating into that place where, oh my goodness, we've invested all this here, that now we just get to enjoy them and watch them. And yeah, they're going to make mistakes. They're teenagers. You made mistakes, right? But man, you're going to have so much fun with them and so much opportunity. That's my sweet spot working at Grace, is I love middle school through probably collective age, that anywhere within that group. I love them. I get them. I think that is a promise that God granted when I prayed that prayer at 13. I will give you a ministry. I will give you an opportunity because you prayed and asked me to never let you forget what this feels like.
Yeah. And that piece of you has probably stayed 13.
Yeah.
Like you said, as you get, and I feel this too. I feel like I went over the hill,
Yeah.
like metaphorically and physically, and in many ways in the past year.
got run over.
It's a journey. It's a journey. I'm
It's a
embracing
journey.
it now because I love everything that I've experienced. Like you're sharing, it's like that's what wisdom is all these experiences and the evidence and the providence and the like your witness, your testimony. Like you can just see it over and over again. It gives you more hope and faith and all that consistency. While also you have stayed so in tune with a 13-year-old girl, with a teenage anybody, that you're able to stay in touch with that and know what they need. And like, I love that that's tied back to that promise that you made to God and he made back to you, that this will be used in some form in ways you never could have imagined. But
So like even when our girls, our son turned 13, I was like, oh, I remember this. No, thank you, God. Yes, I remember this. This is good. We are heading in the right direction here. And it was always not about behavior, right? It's always about the heart. We want to get to the heart of what's happening and not change behavior. And we absolutely adore them and love every minute we get to be with them. We now have 2 that live in New York City.
wow.
We have one that's actually planning a wedding. She's getting married in October.
Oh, is this your first child getting married?
First child getting married.
That's so
Yep.
exciting.
And then our youngest son, he graduates from Moody in May 17th. So he'll graduate from Moody, and then he's headed off to seminary after that. And, I always thought, oh, they'll come back. They'll be close. They'll stick around. But they've all kind of decided, to go in. And I think that's just because they feel like this is a safe place to come back to always, but they feel the confidence to go out and be who God's created them to be.
It's still so connected. I'm sure that whether virtually or visits and such, you guys are still deeply connected. Are the 2 New Yorkians, are they like nearby each other? Are they supporting each other and staying close? Okay.
Yep. FaceTimed with them yesterday a little bit. One of them goes to a church in Harlem, and they took over the Apollo Theater yesterday for Easter services because they're all of the services that they have, they wanted everybody, I think, to be together. So they were at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, and she was on camera. She was serving on camera that day. And the other one was at her church, which is called The Fount. And she was, I forget what she said she was connected with there, but there's something, a small group that she's getting connected with this week. And then our son was at his church in Chicago, which is Covenant Presbyterian Church, I think is the name of it. Not really sure. So everybody's, kind of, they've just gone out, they've made their way, they've found their place. They love Jesus. They're excited about what he can do in their life. And when they come back and visit, I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, because you love to
them.
be together.
Yeah, I told him the other day, I said, listen, I made people that I like so that I would have all of these good friends, and then you left me. I mean, come on. They're like, Mom, we'll always come back. We'll always be around. I'm like, I know. I love it.
Oh, wow, what fun. You're just such a delight to be around. From my, what I see from
Yeah.
you and the effervescent glow from you and your smile and your laugh, which probably you can still hear from a distance, just like when you were a kid coming here for the first time.
Yes, so loud.
Yeah.
So loud. But I do, I have seniors this year for student life groups. In student ministries, I have senior girls. So they're graduating out. So there's a lot of things going on with that where you feel, just that, they're moving on. They're really excited about Jesus. They're excited about what they're doing. They're serving. They're loving. They're doing all the things you would want them to do. But then there's that little piece where you're like, but you're going away.
It's something to celebrate. I mean, it's just like parenting, right? You look at your kids and like, I cannot wait to see what you look like tomorrow, but I also want to remember what you looked like yesterday. And I want to be present at the same time, like this pull in every direction, which is like so good and also so painful so delightful, yet so sad, like all those feelings. And I think that present piece is really just where you got to land, right? Like where they are now and
be in the moment.
Yes,
Yep,
exactly.
be in that moment and just soak it all in and recognize that, they were God's long before they were ever
That's
yours,
so true.
and that you just get to borrow them for a
Yes.
certain amount of time.
Right, and train them up and
Train
set
them
them
up.
up for what the Lord has in store for them in their lives as well, like your parents did for
Yep.
you.
Yep. It's a lovely heritage that anybody, and I would say that very clearly, if you don't have that, if you're mourning that because you don't have that, the beauty is you get to create that whenever you want. You can start today, even if it's just 2 or 3, or if it's just a group of friends, or if it's, your past, your children have been raised, they're gone, you're, with a group of friends. Boy, you can create that beautiful family and community with them. And it's hard, but you get to make those decisions that you don't have to follow the same patterns that were set out for you. You can actually be a cycle breaker and change things and be different and make it happen today. Like God is the God of what? 15, 16, 17, 35 chances, right? Like he's always, always saying, you know what? I'm right here. Rely on me and
Do
let
you
me
trust
take
me?
you. Yeah. Do you trust me?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much for everything that you've done for all of the youth for our church and the generations that are now grown. I'm that person that's, I remember when you were yay big. It just blows your mind to see them grow up.
Yeah.
But you probably have such an interesting vantage point on that, of all the generations of kids that you have seen come through this church over what you said 16 years of
16,
them, and now you probably have some of their kids and
Yeah.
all that crazy stuff.
That's that mind-blowing moment where you're like, wait a minute. I think this senior class, I worked in the 2 and 3-year-olds when this senior class this year is graduating. And as I sat in that 2 and 3-year-olds room and they would come in and, pulling away from the parents or like trying to get out so they can get to service and they might be crying or upset, there was just like, okay, you know what, come sit down. We're going to read some books. We're going to
Some
color some
Cheerios.
pages. Yeah, Cheerios. We're going to talk about Jesus. And even yesterday, there was an opportunity over at Montrose, and I haven't filled in Power Kids in years because I'm pretty much in student ministries.
Yeah.
I filled in Power Kids yesterday over there, and I was like, oh, I love these kids. This is so fun. Like, I just don't think when you just say yes to Jesus, you just say yes, then he gives you whatever it is you need to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Because I did not feel prepared for that at all yesterday. But I was like, it's Easter. Of course we're all going to like rally the troops and everybody's going to have to fill in somewhere. So I got that opportunity and I was like, wow, I really do. It's so fun. Because I remember these seniors.
Well, and
they
now
were
the
in there.
seniors, their parents are clinging to them,
Yes.
saying, please don't go.
Don't
And
go.
it's the opposite of when the kids are saying, please don't go.
Right.
And with the same emotion. Oh, what a world.
Just a little role reversal.
Exactly. Oh, man. Well,
that's so great.
I'm like you. I'm like, I can't imagine my kids ever moving away from me. So I'm going to live in that right now.
Yeah,
And cling to that as best I can.
Yes, I'm obviously not a prosperity gospel, but I want to claim it. I want to be like, I'm going to create a compound, and then everybody can just like share a pool and like a big barn,
Yes.
and everybody could build a house around
How
the
is
perimeter.
commune living not more of a thing? I think we
I
can
don't
start
get
this,
it.
Deb.
I
Let's
think
do
we
it.
do.
Let's buy some property. Make it happen.
Make it happen.
I'm into it. I'm so into it.
Oh, I know. I just the whole idea of homesteading seems a little overwhelming, but being on a compound,
But finding the people who that is their vibe, come to
Yeah.
my community.
Yes.
Make yourself at home.
raise those chickens.
Yes.
Good job.
You do you. I'll make sure there's a good party happening on a Friday night.
Yes.
We all have our strengths.
We
That's
all
all
have
I'm
our
saying.
strengths. Amen.
Oh, well, thank you for
I love
sharing
it.
your strengths with
Thank
us. Our final
you.
thing that we do on Unscripted is to share our unscripted song to add to the Unscripted Worship playlist.
I love it.
Do you have a song that
I have so many.
that is something maybe that is meaningful in your journey? Do you remember what
Yes.
song you were worshiping to in 2004 when you told God, I trust you? Is there something new that's been making you tap your toe or making you tear up?
I wish I'd remembered that, but I do not remember which one that is. But I can tell you this. If it's anything Phil Wickham, I'm in 100%. But the song, I think probably my favorite of him would be Living Hope, is probably my favorite Phil Wickham
Yes.
worship song. Love that one.
Yes.
But Chris Tomlin's Holy Forever might be one of my second favorites. It's
Holy
just
Forever.
yes. So I think those are the ones that I have really just engaged with. Just struggling to make sense of losing our sister. This past December. I know she's in no pain. She's in heaven. She's with Jesus. She's super excited and worshiping him and exactly where she should be. But we are just missing her a lot. She was sort of that steady rock of our sisterhood of the three of us. But well, we're doing okay. Well, we just that Holy Forever is probably the one that I probably clung to the most. And then there's also, you know what? Oh, I forgot about him. Well, there's Cody Carnes, Firm Foundation.
Yes.
That
Ooh,
that
okay.
might
And
be-
that's a staple here at Grace too.
Yes,
Firm
yes,
Foundation. I
yes.
like that one.
And then my son, our son has turned me on to City Alight. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
So they're a worship band out of Australia, and they have, it's just called City Alight, ALIGHT.
That's a good word. A
Oh,
light.
it's
I
so
love that.
they have some really great worship music, and his one of his favorites is "Yet Not I, But Christ in Me," and that it's a really good one. Really,
okay.
really good group. If you just Spotify City Alight, that's a great playlist to just kind of work through and just
Get to
be
know
in
something
worship.
new. Well,
Yeah.
you started with one of my favorites, Living Hope,
Yes.
which what I love about any worship song really, but that one in particular, there's just
Mm-hmm.
different versions that you can connect with as well. If you've ever heard, there's just like these really peaceful versions
Yeah.
and like all these
Acoustic
different
kinda-
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I love to just get the same lyrics but in a different vibe. And
Mm-hmm.
Holy Forever is new to me, so I'm going to be looking that one up. Firm Foundation, love it. And
Yeah.
then City of Light, something new altogether. So I
Well,
love that.
We kind of do that at home. We have a TV in our kitchen. And if we're it's kind of the central place everybody hangs out, and so we put on like Spotify Phil Wickham radio, and then it brings up all of the different
Yes.
artists, and
Yeah.
they cycle through, and I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
ooh, I like this. Ooh,
What was
I'm gonna
that
write that down.
Add that to your playlist. Exactly. And that's exactly why we do this. So
Yeah.
you can start playing the the unscripted worship playlist in
Yes.
your kitchen too, if you'd
Yes.
like. Now
Love
that your
it.
songs are in there.
Yeah.
But so anybody listening, you can look that up on Spotify, unscripted worship playlist, and Deb's songs will be added to it. Also, if there's anything in Deb's journey that connected with you, if it's anything with grief, anything with wanting to volunteer with our students, or if you're a student and you want to jump into 360, anything like that, or a parent who would love your child to jump into 360, you can reach out to us. We have an email, unscripted@graceohio.org. Reach out to us. We can get you connected to Deb or anybody here on staff that might be able to reach out to you in whatever experience that you're having right now that you might be in need. So thanks so much for sharing your
Thank you,
story.
Audrey. This is great.
Yeah. Loved getting to know you more. And just to even know, like you talked about your family and your father as a pillar. But so are you. I just want you to know that. I hope that you do because, again, from the outside, like when I think of, again, like the Curtis family, your abundant family is how I see you. And that has served so many more people in our biblical family. So I appreciate you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.